Moonshine Jesus, baby, alright. Moonshine Jesus, a surprising delight. Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Moonshine Jesus Show. I'm Caleb, and I'm here with my good buddy Mark today. How are you today, Mark?
I am doing great. I'm always excited, but I might be the most excited about our topic today. I'm looking forward to this.
To Lower Decks. So
Yeah.
if you haven't seen Star Trek Lower Decks, here's the thing. You're going to find out a lot about it today because this is a zone that is filled with spoilers. And so we are going to spoil some things in the third season, but we're going to have a lot of fun while we do it. And I want to let you know that we're brought to you today by progressivechristianity.org. Wonderful organization, tons of great resources. Check out progressivechristianity.org. Check out social media as well, and follow the Moonshine Jesus Show on social media. So we are talking about Star Trek Lower Decks. We're going to spoil some things for you, but before we do all of those things, we're going to drink. And Mark, I need to know, what are you drinking today?
Well, today I'm having Melshot, which is the Romulan word for Romulan whiskey. And it was in the very first episode of the very first season of Lower Decks, it was mentioned. It is 2 ounces of bourbon, an ounce of fresh lemon juice, half an ounce of simple syrup, half an ounce of blue curacao, and 2 dashes of bitters, and garnished with a little lemon twist. And I, of course, have served it up in my Starfleet highball glass. Now, what direction did you go in?
So I am drinking the typical drink that I drink whenever we talk about a Star Trek show. I'm drinking Romulan ale. I don't know what the so I don't know what the Romulan word is for Romulan ale. I'm pretty impressed that you knew they said it.
I did my research. I did my research.
Oh, you did separate research to find out exactly what it's called.
Just what it would call. Yeah.
Well, you know what? The only
it's canon, man. It's canon.
It's canon.
It's actually
okay,
canon.
Well,
yeah.
The only research I did was taste testing. That's it.
Oh, that's the best kind of research.
It's pretty good. Okay, so I've got this. It is also blue curacao, vodka, rum, and a little bit of club soda to top it off. Romulan ale.
Lovely.
So cheers to you,
sir.
Mark.
How about yours?
It's good. That's good.
Yeah, mine's delicious. Absolutely. I'd do that again.
Good. Well, let's do it right now. Let's go ahead and take another sip and come back.
Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Hello, and welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. You're joining us for our Geeking Out segment. We're talking about Star Trek Lower Decks today, specifically Season 3. For those of you who may not be initiated into Star Trek Lower Decks, let me catch you up just a little bit. Star Trek Lower Decks is a show that, it boldly goes where no Star Trek has gone before, essentially the lower decks of a California-class starship. And rather than focusing on the senior officers, it focuses on the support crew, serving on what, at least initially, is thought of as one of Starfleet's least important ships, the USS Cerritos, in the stardate 2380. So think sort of the next generation timeline where all of this is happening. It's an adult animation show, and so as you might guess from that, it's a bit more, shall we say, irreverent than any other show in the Star Trek universe, but that does not stop it from making very poignant observations that make a direct commentary about the issues of today. And I happen to know, Caleb, that you and I, both being big Star Trek fans, we've already had some discussion about how excited we are about talking about this because we both love Lower Decks.
Yeah, Lower Decks is so much fun because it does boldly go where no Star Trek has gone before, and largely it really leans into the humor of Star Trek. It points out the things that are kind of ridiculous about Star Trek, and it also pays a lot of fan service, which is
Tons
a
of
lot
fan
of
service.
fun. And so if you're a big Trekkie, like we are, then you can get a little bit deeper into the universe, and there are lots of references to fun things that other folks might miss. And so I don't know about you, Mark, but I particularly loved in this season the episode where they were on Deep Space Nine.
Yeah,
and that was so much fun because it's been a long time since we've been back. Yeah, and Quark.
You see Kira and Quark. Oh, it was fantastic. So much fun. Lots of little wink, wink, nudges to Star Trek fans in all of that. It was so much fun. I absolutely love that. And while they're being irreverent and sort of picking and making fun of Star Trek in general, they still manage to kind of celebrate Star Trek and still stick to that Star Trek original purpose of using this far off time and place to make commentary about our modern world. And I think they do that particularly well. The third season, I think, maybe does it better than the first two seasons did. I kind of love the overarching storyline that we get in season 3. I don't know about you. I kind of feel like while there's lots of storylines that happen, for me, the biggest one and the one that I was the most excited about as it was developing was Mariner, who is always a very interesting character. And this, for me, season 3 kind of felt like it was Mariner's story arc of maturing, because we start with headstrong, going to rescue mom all of my own and forget about all of the structure because it's not working, and we end with a character who has been away, wrongly accused, comes back and forgives friends, and sort of is excited about being a part of the bigger picture of what goes on here, and being willing to participate in the way that the structure works the best, particularly on this ship that isn't too heavy-handed with structure. I mean, is that the arch that you think is maybe the main story here, or do you see another arch going on that maybe is a bigger storyline for you?
Well, we got to really delve in deeper to all of these characters, and I really had the same reaction that you did, that we saw a lot more growth of several of our main characters this season than we had in either of the other two seasons combined. And so I love seeing Mariner kind of grow and leave Starfleet for a time and experience something else, and then find that she loves Starfleet and figure out more of who she is. Like, maybe she doesn't have to rebel just to rebel, but maybe there's a place for her in Starfleet. That was kind of fun. It was, I think, fun to see Boimler recognize that he doesn't always have, that maybe he gets more success not out of always following the rules, but sometimes breaking them and pushing boundaries. And the one that I thought was the most interesting for me was Rutherford's story arc, because we get to find out a lot more about him and how he's been kind of used as a tool, and his memory has been wiped, and he's actually contributed to this kind of autonomous class of starships that end up being used in a pretty evil way. So I really liked the Rutherford storyline.
Yeah, I like the Rutherford storyline a whole lot. I kind of love his character anyway. But I do feel like that was almost a secondary thing that we got. But in some ways, it was a much more interesting story. Thus, there is this great mystery. What we're seeing in Mariner is just a typical, like a growth story of a person who's still kind of living out their childhood, has this job, but is still kind of fighting the system, which is a good thing, but not fighting in a healthy way, and learning and maturing and figuring out how much they actually do appreciate what's there. And I know as we go forward, we'll see her continue to fight the system, but in, maybe more mature ways. Rutherford is just such a fantastic we have two seasons where we just kind of think that this is this guy that has this implant and something happened in his life that required it. And now all of a sudden we start finding out that there's this darker mystery going on. And so I don't think it was the main story arch, at least particularly compared to Mariner, it's certainly much more intriguing, don't you think?
I think so too. And especially since we think that it's been elective for him to get this implant, that he's decided to kind of merge with machine here. But we discover in this season that actually it wasn't elective at all, that he didn't have any choice in it, and that it was used to kind of cover an accident and to cover his role in this kind of classified mission. And so I think that that's to me, I mean, there's a lot there, but I think it kind of hinted to the role of like machines and tracking, and how much consent do we give to kind of machines being a part of our lives. And I thought that was an interesting way to talk about that. And so I think it hints to this being deep too, right? It's funny, it's a cartoon, it's irreverent, and also it's asking some pretty important questions.
Some really important questions. I mean, we ultimately see something within the system that is his implant taking over his personality and allowing something that was supposed to be buried come out. And that's all because of this implant, these electronics, which is sort of the smaller story of the larger story that's going on in the entire season of kind of the California class against the Texas class. I don't think that was an accident that they had California against Texas, the Texas class. The Texas class being the kind of like overly structured and computer animated and fraught ultimately with all kinds of issues because of it. And the California class being the one that's more about people and being on the ground and being very connected to what you're doing and having real relationships. I feel like he's sort of the microcosm of the larger story. We get kind of that both going on at the same time, and really kind of brilliantly tied together in terms of how it's written, in terms of those two storylines. They really play off of each other.
They really do. And I love the fact that the California class, of course, comes out on top, just as California and the politics of California, right, ought to come out on top of Texas and the politics of Texas.
And the reason it comes out on top ultimately in this storyline is because it's much more personal. It's much more about people. It's much more about connectedness. It's much more about who they are together and the importance of relationships. Whereas the Texas class is much more about removing people and not caring about people and caring more about structure. And I think it's sort of brilliantly told. I love what they did with it.
I think so too. And I think this is really the cool thing about Lower Decks in general, that we see the camaraderie of the crew in a way that's not so formal. And I've seen, a lot of people reflect on Star Trek over the years and say, you know what, actually it would be terrible to live on one of those ships. It's so structured and it's not fun at all. And on Lower Decks, we get to see them bonding and having real relationships where like they actually get mad at each other. The relationships actually fracture and they have to do some work to heal those. And they're in close quarters. They don't all have huge quarters, huge rooms, but they all have to live together. And so I think it's a lot more realistic too. It
definitely is. And I love it's filling in a space that Star Trek has missed traditionally, at least, in that it really is a story of four friends who each have their strengths and their weaknesses, and they are very open with each other and like pick on each other about their weaknesses, but also support each other because of their weaknesses. And you see them constantly coming back together, and that it's not their individuality that makes them a great team. It is their relationship together that makes them a great team. And we see that play out over and over again. And I kind of just feel like that's, like you said, that's what real life really is about, is how we come together and not how we stand out individually.
Yeah, and having fun too. I mean, who wants to work on a starship where you're out and hurling through space and everything
Right.
is dry and drab? That does sound kind of awful. And so
Yeah.
the California class, have, and I think it also one of the things I've also appreciated about this, I suppose, is that uh, the California class is known for like second contact, right? Not first contact with
Right.
other
First contact,
societies,
right.
but the second contact after the hard work of negotiations have already been done. And so I think that also translates pretty well too to life, that we try to glorify these first things, and
Right.
where life really happens is like in the second contacts of whatever our lives are, right?
Yeah.
The follow up, the follow through, the things that come next. And so I like that we get a Star Trek where we get to explore that a little bit, where it's not all trailblazing, but some of it is kind of mundane relationship keeping and building, and beyond the people that are just on the Cerritos, but also the new people that they're coming into contact with. And sometimes they find that those relationships are really hard to maintain. And that's
Yeah.
kind of like real life too, right? That it's
Right.
a lot
Yeah.
easier to talk about relationships on the surface, but maintaining relationships, that can be really, really hard work. And so
Yeah,
I like that we
exactly.
get to see that.
Absolutely, and I think that it also is great. It's great that it's particularly this season where we see so much, as we've said, character growth. I think that having it happen in the lower decks in the working class, having it happen on a ship that doesn't get all the glory,
Mhm.
is really I love the reality behind that. That's where growth really happens, is in the daily, the mundane, in the day to day. Yeah, we have these mountaintop moments, but those are much less likely to permanently change who you are than the day to day life, learning from it, being observant, having friends who surround you and support you and give you honest feedback. Those are the places where we really grow, where we become better people. And I'd love that we have this show that's finally giving that a voice. We haven't seen that in the past.
No, and it gives it a lot more flexibility to explore different areas too. And so I'm
Mhm.
excited to see. I hope that this is a show that continues on for a long time, because I think there are a lot of possibilities and a lot of other things to explore. So I have loved this. I don't know that it's my favorite Star Trek, but it
All
is
right.
certainly the one that is the most fun to watch, I think.
I think that is exactly the case. Yeah, it's definitely not my favorite one, but I love it, and I really enjoy every single episode. It's more lighthearted, it's more irreverent, but it's also this sort of insider fan um, pleaser, and I absolutely love that about it. Listen, we could keep geeking out, and probably after the show's over we will, but right now we need to move on to our next segment. So we're going to have a break real quick, and when we come back, we'll enter into our theopolitical segment.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We are entering our Theopolitico segment of talking about Star Trek Lower Decks. And even though it is a show that's kind of irreverent and that's funny, there is also a lot here, and it is still at its heart a Star Trek show, which I think Star Trek is about social commentary. And so it's kind of fun for a cartoon that is kind of making fun of itself and having fun, at least with the lore, also is saying something significant. And so one of the things that I saw earlier, or that I saw throughout the season, was something I mentioned earlier, and that's something about the value of technology that I think comes up a lot in the season. And so Rutherford, of course, discovers that he's a part of this secret project. And then we discover that Admiral Buenamigo wasn't such a Buenamigo after all.
Not at all.
He was just kind of using Rutherford's design to strip the ship of actual people and to make them fully autonomous. So we've got that going on throughout the season. Then we also have this kind of very unique episode where the sentient robot Peanut Hamper is on this planet, and we don't see the main characters for much of that episode. And that robot Peanut Hamper then betrays the owl people who think that Peanut Hamper is going to help them. And so the owl people, we discover, has shunned tech. So there's a lot of tech stuff here. And here's my question, Mark, is this asking us to think about the role of technology in our lives? Is it asking us whether technology is a good thing or a bad thing? Or am I thinking too much about it? What do you think about this?
All right. No, I think you're definitely right. That it is asking us to be more reflective about technology in our life. There's no doubt. But I don't think it's coming down hard with an answer outside of saying how important it is for us to pay attention to when technology starts dehumanizing us. Sometimes we see the technology being a positive. For instance, and the penultimate show, there's this. No, it is the final show where they are in this race against the Texan class, where they're trying to finish and see who can finish first. And if they don't win, the all of the California class Starfleet ships are going to be put to rest. Yeah. And one of the things that happens, it's a very small moment, but ultimately it's what changes the storyline, is that when they're on one planet and they're beginning to put in a remote space or a remote place for them to go, technology tells them that there is a microorganism that's living there. And they actually pause and say, stop everything. We need to figure out if this is a sentient being or not. And so there's this, that for me, that's the moment that answers your question, is they're saying, make sure that you're using technology in a way that honors humanity and honors life, and not in a way that destroys it. And in a lot of ways, that is the theme of the storyline of season 3 overall, is make sure that you're enhancing life, enhancing the value of life, rather than devaluing it through technology. I know that's a little tiny small moment, but it felt like to me that was a big tell about what was going on here.
I think so too, and I think that Star Trek is always kind of asking questions about technology, in part because it's set in the future, but I think more so than a lot of other kind of sci-fi fantasy stuff, because it really deals with when is technology actually enhancing our lives, when is it not, when is it overstepping it, and also, at what point do we recognize kind of humanity within things that wouldn't normally be considered like human? So I think about, like, in Star Trek: The Next Generation, we've got Data, right? We've got this living android, and we've got Picard, the captain, advocating for him, for his humanity. And so I like the exploration of when technology is helpful and when it's harmful. And I think you're right that as long as it's benefiting our lives, that where the show kind of comes down on is that it's okay, but whenever it's interfering with our humanity, that maybe it's not. So I think that's probably true for us today too, because we're kind of having to juggle that a lot in our own society. And
absolutely.
Where do you think we're headed in terms of technology here, Mark? When is technology at a point where it's starting to dehumanize instead of enhance our lives? Are we there yet? Or what do you think the line is for us?
Well, I mean, I think that is not, I don't think there's one answer. I think that each individual person has to figure out how they're using technology, how they're interfacing it in their life, and if that's enhancing their life or not. And it's going to be different for different people, particularly for different generations. Because we all understand technology differently and use it differently. Twitter might be the perfect thing to look at right now, with Elon Musk taking it over, and he's saying that he's going to kind of allow freedom of speech, which really ultimately means that he's going to allow people to say some pretty horrible things constantly,
Right.
and not regulate it too much. Well, that's going to take something that could be a very positive in the world, and has been. I mean, we've seen uprisings from the underclass happen because of Twitter and their ability to communicate immediately and have an impact. And now we're seeing that technology being turned and being used to empower the people who are already powerful, and ultimately marginalize and fool and trick and degrade folks who are already struggling. So for me, that's kind of a perfect example of that it's going to be about how do we as individuals use it and look at it and decide to use it. Because along with all of his freedom of speech, you could still decide to stay on Twitter and use it for contacting and having information spread about positive things, and you can ignore all that other stuff. So it comes down to how do we use it. It's always going to come down to how we use it. And as it gets more and more powerful, it's going to be more and more tempting to use it to gain power rather than to enhance humanity.
Yeah, Twitter in particular, I think, is a double-edged sword. And I think even before Elon Musk decided to purchase Twitter, I think during the Trump presidency, we saw Twitter used in a terrible way for kind of the upper class, right? It gave him a platform where he could spread all kinds of misinformation, and even to organize the January 6th stuff. It's absolutely a double-edged sword. And so I think that leads me into one of the other things that I'm curious about. So Star Trek is also kind of seen like this utopian society. Like it's had this vision of what's best for humanity. Like we could create this kind of utopian world. Here's my question. Do you think that kind of world is possible? Can we move to that kind of thing? Or is humanity ultimately kind of flawed, and maybe we can't get past ourselves enough to ever move to this society where we can abolish money and we can treat everyone equally and all of that kind of stuff that Star Trek has traditionally stood for?
Well, I want to believe that utopian kind of society is a possibility. Unfortunately, I think the show itself and its various iterations teach us that it's probably not. If you think about the original Star Trek, the original series, the structure that they work out of Starfleet is a very positive, and has everyone there has the best intentions, and you've got all these guidelines to try to make sure that you don't hurt. But then as you watch, as new iterations of Star Trek has come out, a lot of the issues become internal issues with Starfleet, and all of the governing bodies are starting to become just like Admiral Buenamigo. His whole reason that he's doing all of this is because he'd hit the top of being an admiral, and he couldn't figure out how to get any higher, and he wanted to get higher. Like, so that kind of utopian idea of isn't it great that you're an admiral and are part of this organization that's trying to make the world better isn't good enough. And so I think the show itself, or the Star Trek universe itself, tells us that even though they were founded on this idea of trying to show a utopian society is possible, they've started stepping back on that themselves and started showing that maybe it's not, that there's always corruption. And I think unfortunately that's history has proven that out as well, and that what maybe the best thing that Star Trek does for us is show us how important it is to always be trying to get it, and that achieving it isn't really the goal as much as improving humanity and trying to be better people, even as we recognize there'll be those of us who are going to be more interested in power and those kinds of things. I mean, I don't know. That's kind of where I end up on this. What do you think?
I think that's a helpful nuancing, because I think whenever Christians are talking about a utopian society, right, we're talking about like the reign of God that Jesus talked about, like the creation of kind of a more utopian society. And so the fact that maybe that can never be realized, but the striving for it is important, and maybe what Jesus called us to do, I think is a very helpful nuance, with the recognition that maybe that utopian society might not ever exist. And I think you're right that in Star Trek itself, maybe it doesn't really ever exist and in the way that it maybe thinks it does. And one of the ways for me that's maybe most clear is that we see human beings trying to put aside their differences and get along, and yet we see stereotypes of entire alien cultures, right? They're like monoliths. And that's one of the things that really has always bothered me about Star Trek. It's like, okay, all Klingons are bloodthirsty and black, by the way, which is problematic. And then like
very problematic.
And all Ferengi are capitalist pigs who are only out for money, and all Romulans are evil and conniving. And so like it also, while trying to promote a utopian, is also stereotyping entire groups of people. And so that leads me to another question, Mark, that I need your help nuancing.
Oh no!
It's just like,
it's not always good to turn to me for help, man. I'm trying to tell you.
I need it, man. I need it, because I'm trying to figure this out here. So the Federation itself, isn't like an ideal that we should strive for, or is like the Federation actually like an imperialist fantasy? Like, is the Federation really kind of an imperialist navy out in a space navy? Right. Because I mean, they're always talking about being people of peace, but they got photon torpedoes and phasers, and they're not afraid to shoot things up a little bit. Could you help me figure that out?
I don't know that I can help you a lot with it, but I can say, I think it is. Let's not do to the Federation what Star Trek does to the Romulans and to the Klingons, and to like, it's a little of both, right? It's a little of all of it. Yeah, it is a bit of an imperialist kind of empire that's coming in and trying to control the way that societies that have been working for, in some cases, thousands upon thousands of years, and trying to come in and make them better. And by imposing that what they believe is how things should be done. So there is definitely a bit of colonialism going on there. But at the same time, when we look at some of their guiding principles, there are some really amazing and beautiful things in there that are about appreciating and honoring societies. And so I think it's a very nuanced thing. And maybe it's that it's very realistic, is kind of going back to, will there be a utopian society, and us saying, well, not really, but you can always strive for it. Will there be a utopian empire? Well, no, but within an empire, you can at least strive to be better about who you are. I don't think that we'll ever escape having structures that try to understand how we relate with each other and organize commerce and different things like that. I would love to see a society where we could figure out how to do that, but I don't think that's any time in either of our lifetimes. And so it's going to be around, and maybe we can just figure out how to do it better, which I feel like is what the Federation ultimately is trying to do, and what Gene Roddenberry was trying to help us start beginning to see when he created this. I don't know. Am I being over hopeful about what the Federation could be, and rather than just a heavy-handed empire?
I think that's important, right? Whenever they obey the prime directive and don't decide to just throw it out, their guiding principles, that they usually are better off. And usually I think they discover that if that the prime directive is there for a reason. And so I think we kind of find that as a society as well. Like, like maybe if we keep church and state separate, we're better off, and maybe there is a reason for that. or like maybe as Christians, like maybe if we really do strive to love and not judge, like maybe Jesus was serious about those things, and maybe we should like think about that and try to implement. Okay, that's enough. We could do all kinds of theopolitical stuff with Star Trek. We would be here all day, but we can't be here all day because we have got to try to make each other look stupid, Mark, and that's what we're going to do in the next segment, right?
Absolutely,
so
man.
Let's come back. Let's make each other look stupid.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. You are in our Make Me Look Stupid segment where we commence to trying to make each other look stupid by stumping the co-host with some kind of a question. We are not as successful at this as you might think that the title of this segment would imply, but it's still fun anyway. So here's my question for you.
Okay.
When you watched the final episode of season 3, did you watch it through the end of the credits?
No, I didn't.
Was there
a post-credit scene?
There was a post-credit tag. So
no. Okay, tell me about it.
I'm going to somewhat describe it to you. So this is great because I am going to make you look stupid here because you didn't see it.
Because I didn't see it. I don't know.
All right. So the post-credit scene is you're in space and there's a lot of debris. And then you start focusing in on what is clearly Rutherford's implant. And if you remember at the end of season 1, there was a big battle and ultimately he has to get a new implant, if I'm remembering correctly. So his implant is sitting there in all of this debris. And then a traction beam shoots down towards it. All right. And it grabs hold of it and starts pulling it up. And the eyepiece flips through a couple of things. And one of the most clear things that we see is Badgie. Badgie shows up in the eyepiece.
Oh, yeah.
All right. And then it just cuts away. So my question to you is, who is it that's after that headpiece? And what do they want with Badgie's code?
Oh, I think it's gonna be Buenamigo. I think Buenamigo has not given up on his aspirations for advanced admiralhood. He's only a 3-star admiral or whatever, and he wants 4 pips on this thing. Right. So I think Buenamigo is going to come back and try to the Alaska class or something. I don't know. Starship.
Florida class. It's probably Florida class based on
probably Florida. That's right. The DeSantis class Starship is going to with Badgie and the
DeSantis would be one of the actual starships. The DeSantis would be a Florida class starship.
That's who I think it is, and thank you for describing that in such vivid detail. I feel like I actually saw.
I'm glad. When I saw it, I was like,
"Who do you think it is? Who do you think it is, Mark? What do you think?"
I completely agree. It has to be Buenamigo, but I think instead of trying to level up in his admiralhood, I think that he's that at this point, that's a bygone dream. I think that he was quietly the main bad guy of this season because he was sending the USS Cerritos into all these situations throughout the season that he knew that was going to make them look bad. So ultimately he could introduce his new class of starships. I think next season he's going to be Khan. He's going to be the big bad guy, and I think he's going to try to use this code. But see, the thing is, he doesn't completely know, although he heard it. So one of the issues with Rutherford's code is that it has daddy issues.
Daddy issues.
Right. And we see that through Badgie. And during the final episode, his ship's turned on him and goes, "You're not in charge of me anymore, Father." And so he doesn't quite know it yet. And I think all next season is going to be him slowly discovering that the code that he is stealing from Rutherford's old interface that has the Badgie personality in it has daddy issues, and he's going to slowly deteriorate as he tries to fight against his own new whatever he's creating, trying to like rule the universe. I don't know. That's my imagination going wild with it. That's where I see it going.
I love that, and I love the thought of Buen Amigo being the new Khan, but you can't yell that out quite as well.
Buen Amigo! Not the same effect, is it? It really is.
No.
It doesn't exactly roll off the tongue in any way whatsoever.
You need a single syllable. Buen Amigo! Right. I don't know. I like it. Okay.
Hey, maybe he'll change his name. He'll be Khan 2 or something. He'll just like take up Khan's. Yeah, who knows?
Mal amigo.
So, all right, so that do that so that at some point, Carol Freeman, the captain, can yell out, "Ah!" It'd be great. It'd be great.
Okay, here's what I want to know. So there's the episode where they're in the holodeck, and holodeck episodes are always fun, no matter what version of Star Trek you're in. The holodeck episodes are always one of the most fun. And so I think we get one of the more significant lines of the season from that episode, from a hallucination of Sulu. Do you remember?
I vaguely remember this.
But the safety protocols are on, right? But Boimler gets like dehydrated and starts hallucinating, right? Because the safety protocols don't protect you from being dehydrated.
Right.
You still have to drink your water. And so Sulu shows up, and we get a little George Takei. Yeah. So he says this. He encourages Boimler to embrace randomness. And because Boimler's his clone, has died all of a sudden, and the clone, remember, had taken the position on Riker's ship, the Titan, and Boimler stays on the Cerritos in the lower decks,
right?
And so just randomly, we think that his clone has died. It ends up he's joined Section 31. We think he's dead. So here's what Sulu says. He says, The randomness of death is merely a reflection of the unexpected joys we find in life. Tell me this.
The randomness of death. Say that for me one more time.
The randomness of death is merely a reflection of the unexpected joys we find in life. And so I want to know, is life really all randomness or not? And does the randomness, and if it is random, does the randomness contribute to this life or detract from the joy of life?
What an incredible, that's the best question you have ever asked. It is
Thank you.
Hands down. Here's to you, sir. What a fantastic question.
I'm inspired by Sulu,
Well, who's not inspired by George Takei? I mean, he's just amazing. But yes, I do think life is all random. Coming from a Presbyterian minister, that should have a lot of impact.
That should not predetermined.
That should be a significant statement coming from a Presbyterian minister. Listen, no, I do think it's all random, but I also think that our concepts of random are all wrong. Chaos is actually quite beautiful, and actually, when you take it in the macro, has a pattern. And life is a reflection of that. Life would be meaningless if it wasn't random. life would be boring without the chaos of randomness. And so, yeah, death is definitely part of that randomness, and in a lot of ways, the randomness of death gives life value. If it weren't for the randomness of death, life would not be significant. And so, yeah, I definitely believe that we should celebrate randomness and live into it. And Boimler, in a lot of ways, is the character that's learning this. He wants structure, and he wants safety, and he wants security, and he makes all of his choices and decisions based on it over and over again. And we see throughout this season that his life somehow improves when he embraces the randomness, at least some, when he embraces the letting go a little bit, and not always doing the safe thing, and sometimes just doing the thing that seems like it might be good and fun or productive in some positive way. So I guess my answer is, yeah, life is definitely random, but there is a pattern, a beauty to randomness, and that without the randomness of death, then who cares about life anyway?
Yeah.
How ridiculous was my answer?
It was beautiful. It was beautiful, actually,
Okay.
I think. And I won't tell John Calvin or anyone in your presbytery
Don't tell
how
my
you
presbytery.
answered that.
So how do you, what's your thoughts, though?
So I think that I've been thinking about this a lot. Maybe because of the kind of shows that we've been watching for Moonshine Jesus, and maybe also because this season of the church year, for those who celebrate it, right, is the season where we're talking about death and saints and all of that. And so, so liturgically, I've been thinking about it a lot too, and about whether or not it's better to know what's coming or to not. And I think in a lot of ways, knowing what is going to happen does rob you of the joy of life. And in a lot of ways, an unlimited potential and unlimited possibilities is somewhat joyful in not knowing. And it does add to joy, to the joy of life, the unpredictability of life. And so I think you're right, and I think Sulu's right, that in not knowing either when we are going to die or how we are going to die, that adds value to our life, the unexpected and randomness of life. And I think Christians sometimes miss that, and especially as so many Christians are focused only on getting to the next life, that they forget that this life is a gift. And so I appreciate the realization that we've only got today, and it's a gift, and to enjoy it the best we can.
Amen. Absolutely. I love that answer.
Good. Well,
listen.
We didn't make each other look stupid today, Mark.
We didn't make each other look stupid, but I got to tell you that there was some good ground that was covered there that needs to be talked about more in religious circles. And I very much appreciate your perspective. And I very much appreciate all the folks who have hung with us this long. We have gone on longer than we normally go on in a show, but there was some great information that needed to be talked about. And we are, I think this also just shows you how much you and I actually really deeply do love Lower Decks. Even though it might not be our favorite Trek, it might be our dirty secret. It might be the one that we really kind of like love the most, but we don't really want to say it out loud. But anyway, whether that is the case or not, it could be. Whether that is the case or not, we have reached the end of the show. We are so thankful for all of you for being here with us. And until next time, when we're going to be talking about, what are we going to be talking about, sir?
We're going to be talking about Wakanda Forever, the new Black Panther movie. And I know, Mark, that we're both excited about this.
I am out of my mind about this. I am so excited about this. I've heard a lot. There's some early reviews that are in, and they are all incredibly good. We are in phase 4 of the Marvel Universe, and I have heard more than one reviewer say this is the best thing that phase 4 has produced. So this is going to be fantastic. When does it come out, Caleb?
It comes out. Does it come out on Thursday?
Thursday night. Thursday night.
It comes out on Thursday night. So if you want to go on for a midnight show, plan on Thursday.
Yeah.
And I'm excited, Mark, to see too what they do without Chadwick Boseman and how that all plays out.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know we know that Sister's going to be picking up the mantle, but I'm excited to see what that's going to look like.
Yeah, there's absolutely no doubt that they're going to honor him, and I'm looking forward to see how they do so. Certainly a horrible and sad loss, but what he left for us is something to be celebrated, and I feel like we're going to get to celebrate that a little bit. So I'm looking forward to it.
We are.
Hey, Caleb, cheers to you, sir. Cheers to another
Mark.
Here's to another fun show, and we'll catch you all the next time on the Moonshine Jesus Show.
Moonshine Jesus.